wisdom on this committee. Yeah, be glad to publicize that.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to the May 1st, 2019 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are continuing to review the warrant articles for both the special and annual town meetings. We have done most of our recommendations. Last meeting we got through most of them. We have a handful that we wanted to go through tonight, some that we needed more information on. We have our town manager, our town accountant, our town moderator, and our fire chief here tonight to discuss various different articles with us. Do we want to start with the fire chief?
I think that makes sense. Yep. Just in case he has to.
Chief, do you want to come up and join? Chief, during the week, had provided us with some documents, some examples of other ambulances for the article for the new ambulance, which was Article 8. We're also discussing the article for the feasibility study,
I saw
which
somewhere
I believe
online,
is Article 10.
I saw somewhere online that there was a $30,000 grant that we just recently got. Is that true?
So
Yes, I saw that.
the
Yeah, I don't-
$30,000 is a request for $30,000 that our
so it's
state
not-
representative has put into the House budget.
So we haven't actually got
So it is
yet.
not guaranteed
Okay, so.
at this point
Okay.
that we would get that. If we do get that, that would certainly be helpful to paying for the feasibility study. I do believe we had questions on where the funding for that study was coming from, so that would be part of it. But if we would like the chief to lead off and talk to us.
And thank you for the invitation back, and I absolutely understand the questions on this. These are expensive items, especially the ambulance. I kind of surprised we didn't have as many questions when I initially submitted that request, but I have lots of information that I have sent you. Did you get copies of that? You all have these? Okay.
I have.
If there's copies of, this is an area study of comparable ambulances in the area, if you want to pass those. And the other one is a 20-page document. If anybody wants a copy of that, I have two copies of those if anybody needs it.
We can look on, I have it in my email if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Everybody needs it. They're on both pages, but. So where would you like me to start? Want me to start with the ambulance itself?
I think,
One of the questions, or it's up to you,
do we
whatever
want to
you want
start
to
with the
discuss.
ambulance, or did we want to start discussing the running of the ambulances?
Just as point of clarification, if I can have the floor for 2 seconds.
Absolutely. Dr. Kyle.
My comments are exclusive about the quantity of the purchase, not the quality of the purchase.
Yes.
It's not a statement of whether or not your due diligence was done, area fire departments were done. And my comments are not a direct relation to any member of public safety. Point of clarification. It's a ludicrously expensive price that I run an ambulance service. That's 3 times what I would pay, and I run equal quality ambulances. I don't have to wear, there's no SCBA equipment that gets stored. It is heavy duty. That's the F550. It's a type 1 ambulance, got it. But a $318,000 spec ambulance is a remarkably expensive ambulance. So that just, I agree with the notions of the safety equipment in the back. And John, I'm not ignoring you, I'm just directing my comments to the chair.
I'll rebut.
I agree the need for it, but $50,000 is an oh my God number, and it begs a whole handful of questions. There are, what the chief had shared with us, and it's part of the minutes, is it's purchasing off of contract. I get it. Other area towns have a median price that they paid of roughly $275,000. If I recall looking at that Excel spreadsheet, it's in my peripheral vision here. There are a whole host of question marks. One, I don't see this as a, if not when, if not now, when question, to be honest. If it's a replacement for a 2002 piece of equipment, and that's the if, then sure. Is the price the right number? Regardless of the effort that went into it, I just don't agree with the number. and I'm not going to vote in favor of it because I don't agree with the number. Not because I don't believe in the need for equipment that's appropriate for the community. I just don't believe in the number. And I can go line by line on why I don't, and it's going to literally, as two service directors, I like this, we need this for this reason. I don't, I like this, oh, I don't see why you need that either. We can go back and forth with that. That's not the intent in any way, shape, or form. I work with the chief through your entire chiefdom, when you were a captain, when he was part of the union, all of this. It's straight shooter. But I just don't like the number.
I don't disagree with the number. I don't like the number either. This is what we came up with looking for the vehicle. I think the first thing I'd say, and again, mutual respect back to you, this is not, shots fired either way, but with your ambulance service, how many 2002 ambulances do you have currently in frontline service right now?
0.
Thank you. That's the number one reason I brought that up, because we're getting 15 years out of these vehicles. And this price reflects basically the 15-year lifespan. And what we try to do, it's not always realistic, but in general, we have 5 years as a frontline, 5 years as the secondary, and then the third 5 years for a total of 15 as a reserve. The issue that we have run into now is we have run these vehicles into the ground with so many miles and engine hours that the 2002 is frontline more often than not, because the 2008, that ambulance has gone down for different repairs. This year alone, almost a month and a half at one time due to a issue with the fuel tank from Ford that ultimately they did repair. So that has been frontline a minimum of probably 2 months this year, the 2002, which most private companies and most area departments don't even own a vehicle that old. So with that in mind, and knowing how we tend to hold on to the vehicles for that long, we need a vehicle that's going to last. This vehicle it's the F450, the four-wheel drive, heavy duty. We're running up and down Route 18. 80% of our calls are going to the South Shore Hospital. Route 18 is not going to improve before it improves. It's going to get worse. And we ran into issues with both the 2002 ambulance and the 2008 ambulance, which are lighter duty chassis, that we have racked the box, the actual physical ambulance box and body, to the extent where they've been welded and repaired twice. And I don't believe the state is going to recertify the 2002 ambulance again. We're trying to squeeze by, assuming this goes through with that. We really do need 3 ambulances to operate 2 because one's a spare. We do the same with the engines. Whenever one goes down, we want to make sure that we have 2 ambulances available. This gets back into the ambulance revenue, which is a whole nother conversation, but it directly ties into it. By operating 2 ambulances, we are able to, and we have, captured about $250,000 a year that would have been going to area towns coming into Abington with those transports. There are still times we'll have an area mutual aid ambulance in when both of our ambulances are out. Sometimes we run calls 3 or 4 deep, or if there's an incident where there's numerous patients and we still need additional help. For the most part, the bulk of our calls we're able to handle with both of our ambulances. So we're able to retain that ambulance revenue that otherwise would have been going to our neighbors. That's the main reason I want to run 2 ambulances, to help offset the cost of the fire department. The stretcher lift in the back is like a vehicle in itself. And I agree with you, Sean. I wish the price wasn't what it is. These are the numbers we're getting back. And it is comparable to the area towns. The sheet that I sent you with the area cost, the other thing to keep in mind, most of these are a couple of years old. The average year when these were purchased was 2016, and just the overall cost of everything has gone up over the last year and a half due to tariffs, the cost of steel, all of it. The engine that we just purchased for $600,000, I could not buy that engine now, and we just had it delivered. The cost of that truck went up $50,000 to $75,000, literally overnight, right after we signed the contract. We signed the contract prior to that. Things are just going up in price. So when we do compare some of the area ambulances, and you have the sheet in front of you, and if you look at the date next to it, which is why I put it there, that's really reflective on.
So did we buy one in 2014? Because you said
We
you're
did.
saying, so we have a 2014, a 2008, and a 2002 currently?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
And I included that because at the time, back 5 years ago, that ambulance was $255. That was, again, a heavy duty, that's an international chassis, you can't get those anymore. Another comparable one is a Dodge chassis, which they're not making those anymore. I had a lengthy conversation with our vendor, who's the largest Ford chassis supplier in this area. You can get Ford. Ford picked up the slack because International and Dodge went down. However, Ford has maxed out the amount of chassis they're making for this model year, and now they've stopped making them until next year. That's a automotive industry game that they play, if you will.
Yep.
So we think we should still be able to get one.
Sean?
I just wanted to keep the focus on the point at hand. The point at hand is, I don't agree with the $350,000. The equipment, again, that notwithstanding, it just seems odd. And it's not odd, the chief is presenting the data that was presented to him.
Yep.
I know personally I can do better from whoever his vendors are. Not that he can't, because you have the contract that's in front of him. This is not a statement of John Nuttall. It is just an amazing amount of money. And if the question or challenge came back saying, could this purchase be done with less options and still achieve the same reliability of service, yes or no? Could the service be done with or without, like as an example, as we look for the vehicle within the vehicle, AKA the Stryker, now self-loading stretcher, electric power cot and self-loading. It's two separate costs, roughly $30,000 to get it into the truck and $25,000-ish for the physical stretcher. Can you use your existing stretchers that you have today, the manual load, 1.5-man stretchers, can you use those with the power load system? The reason why I asked that question is because stretchers do indeed require maintenance, they do indeed go down, they do indeed have malfunctions, and I would hate to see us have to buy another power loading cot, which is a hefty, hefty price. And the question then comes down to, is the next load, I'm certain the standard will be, we're gonna tack on 50 grand for the next one when we look to buy it, whether it's in 5-10 years, because we're trying to migrate, move to a standard, I get it. But the challenge here is, I don't care about the stretcher system, I'm all for it. Save a firefighter's back, save them for actually doing the job that they're really here to do, got it. Not ever touching that one, hence $185,000 base, $128,000 worth of, I forget the term that was used, but it's options. And then on top of that, so it's one of those, when you look through the options, some of the options just scratch your head. That, to me, is getting too nitty-gritty. Hence, I don't agree with the 350. Whether Whitman, whether East Bridgewater, there's no doubt that they went through the same diligence and got the same feedback. There's absolutely no doubt in that. If I were in those communities, I'd say the same exact thing. I don't agree with the number. In fact, when we did the 2014, I raised the same questions. The difference is that there were firefighting gear that was able to be stored inside the International chassis, because given the size of the vehicle and the space, you have double purpose. And I said, you got me. Great, we'll do that. It's not with this particular truck. That is not how this one is configured. So to that end, I got it. I understand. I understand that when you have a fire and an ambulance returning to town, and you need manpower, and we have 6-man groups, which may or may not be good groups, who knows? That's not mine to say, it's the chief's recommendation. You need more manpower, right? You got a building on fire, you need 4 human beings. 2 on a hose, 1 making sure that people are being safe, and 1 operating the pump. I understand that. It's just, again, as we look to ensure that we are fiscally prudent and responsible, and we ensure that we have the right pieces going forward, can this capital request be reduced by a certain amount and still achieve the result that we're looking to achieve? That was the ultimate question.
This ambulance is spec'd out to hold the Scott air packs and the gear as well. That is included with this.
Buried inside all the specs.
It's one of the compartments. It's almost identical to what we're getting with a different chassis. It does now have that power load system, and the costs have gone up. Again, we're getting 15 years out of these vehicles. I don't know what the average vehicle in the privates are, but we're getting 15 years out of this. And I figured this out, basically, if you extrapolate this out over 15 years, it's about $63 a day, which is what it would cost for this ambulance.
In the private sector, how often do you turn over ambulances?
We remount them, for one, which means you can take the box and you can put the box on a brand new chassis, and you're, for all intents and purposes, are refreshing it. So you can get 15 years out of the same vehicle for a fraction of the cost. For 2, a straight type 2 vehicle, which is a type 1, which is very similar. It's a modular box, van integrated front. Those will last for 10 to 12 years. And of course, it depends on where, but I drive in urban environments.
So I think one of the large questions that we had pertaining to the new ambulance and replacing the 2002 was if we are looking at the elimination of the ambulance enterprise fund, and we have had discussions of whether it is still the right decision for the town to run 2 ambulances. While we're evaluating that and while we are still looking into the details of that, is that the right time to purchase another ambulance to have 3 newer ambulances in the rotation if there's a possibility that we will go down to running 1 ambulance, and then I would assume would have 2 ambulances in rotation to run 1.
That has never been any part of my budget request or the ambulance enterprise fund. Basically, the account is here, just back me up if I'm wrong on this. We're still bringing revenue in. It's basically what we're doing with that revenue. That revenue is still coming into the town to be able to be utilized by the town. And ultimately, I'm assuming it would still be used to offset the total cost of your fire department. If we now start, this is not my idea, nor would I ever recommend this, dropping down to only operating 1 ambulance, now you're looking at basically giving away about $250,000 in anticipated revenue to other towns. The calls are not going to go away. So why anybody would want to do
So
that?
I guess how much money does it cost to staff the second ambulance? Is it more than $250,000? I'm
So
just curious.
the
I
question
would like
is-
2 ambulances. I live in this town. I want it to be safe, but
She doesn't like plastic bags, that's the only thing.
the other question is, can you run, if we were saying at some point 2 ambulances doesn't make sense, can you run like 1.5? So like your busiest call times, you run that ambulance to cut down staff costs, but still have 2 ambulances sometimes, like say Friday and Saturday nights are your busy nights, have the 2 ambulances those nights, but like Monday at 11 a.m., not so busy, do you really need the 2?
Either way, we've got the 6 firefighters, which is really what, to manage the call volume for this town.
Okay.
Whether we run a second ambulance or not, I still really need the 6 firefighters on duty.
Okay.
And they're cross-trained as paramedics in, we're putting them to use as paramedics, running the second ambulance, which is just bringing in more money to really offset the cost of the fire department. If we try to do it as a true ambulance enterprise account, and this town for years has kind of had this mentality that, well, you're only bringing in this much money, this is the only thing you can afford with the fire department. But it doesn't work that way. That would be like trying to fund the police department on the amount of tickets they write. That would be like trying to fund the school department on just who's paying, for whatever fees. At some point, we're there to provide a service. It's not necessarily the business with that.
Yeah.
Which I would not propose either one of those,
No,
to
no,
be
no.
honest with you, for obvious reasons. Either way, the call volume for our department is not going down. We're looking at building.
So that
more
was
multi-family
actually
settlements.
one of the things that we've talked about over the past couple of years was, I believe the second ambulance was brought on, I think, just before I came onto the committee. But it was, I know from discussing it over the several years I have been on, that a lot of the discussion at the time was that it would pay for itself. And there were firefighters that started out on grant,
Yep.
that came off of grant, and the hope was that the fundings from the ambulance would continue to pay for the entirety of running the ambulance and thus keeping the enterprise fund and having it.
Correct.
In that regard, I know for a fact that getting back up to 6 firefighters per shift was definitely a portion of the purpose of running the second ambulance.
Correct, yep.
We've also talked in the last couple of years how the revenue from running the second ambulance originally, maybe 3-4 years ago, was projecting at looking to do that, and then the projection of that has come down.
2 things have happened. Originally, it was very close to funding it. It was almost there. The receipts have gone down somewhat, that, not due to call volume, that can be insurance.
Like the payout, you're
The
saying
payout
that
like
the
that.
payout's less?
Yeah, the revenue coming in.
Yeah.
And just the cost of the firefighters, just through longevity, they tend to go up with their contract. So that's really, kind of what's happened with that. We can, working with our ambulance billing company, who's quite accurate, they try to make a projection with the anticipated funds, and then whether it be, if the call volume's not there, which we pretty much have been, or just with the receipts from the insurance and like that, that's still somewhat fluid, but right now it's held. Sometimes those numbers just don't come out to what, we can bill for everything, but the insurance companies only reimburse
Right.
a portion of
Right.
that.
Can you bill larger for the larger, like, you know what I mean? Like, it might sound stupid, but like, can you go to different things that you couldn't go with a smaller one, or, you know what
So
I
I
mean?
think he's saying the heavy-duty
you bill
ambulance
more for
versus
that?
a light-duty.
Like, does it get
You
to
gave,
a,
on your examples, Rockland bought a
are there
light.
some places like you're called for 911, whatever it is, and you have a small one available and they need a big one? I just don't know if that's ever, does that ever happen?
If we had a central station, it would be easier. And I'm not trying to use, I'm serious, The way we operate now is the primary ambulance is coming out of Station 2 on Rockland Street. The secondary ambulance, which is crossed me in with the tower truck, that goes second because we're trying to maintain the staffing on that tower truck. Otherwise, we're going to lose the tower truck half the time, which does nobody any good. So right now, the way we're operating, I think is ideal with what we have. If everybody was in one station, we would have that luxury. We don't have that now. Rockland, their ambulance was more inexpensive, and I was talking to the chief on this the other day. They don't have to really contend with Route 18, number one. It's a lighter duty chassis. This is what we have had with Rescue 2 and A3 that we're destroying
So I
the
think,
actual ambulance box
I
on
think
that.
to Greg's question is lighter duty versus heavier duty, does the call that comes in determine what ambulance would go out?
Not really.
No.
Because to be honest with you, we're not going off-road in these vehicles unless you call Route 18 off-road, which is debatable.
Sometimes.
We're going up
sometimes you
Route
might.
18. And we're not flying up Route 18 because we're safe, but, we're in a heavy vehicle with 2 or 3 people in the back of this vehicle. Now, you drive your vehicles up and down Route 18 now from South Shore Hospital to 139. Imagine what it's like in that ambulance. That's why we're looking at the heavy-duty chassis, to be honest with you. And A4 has been successful. The 2014 ambulance, we built that, we purchased that stronger for that. And knock on wood, we have not had the issues with that we're seeing chronically with the other two. So we're trying to maintain that. And we're not building a Taj Mahal on wheels here, to be honest with you. This is comparable to what the area towns have.
Yep.
Yes, we do have more compartment space, I think, than the privates, but we're also carrying firefighter gear, we're carrying air
You have the
packs.
same compartment space. Literally, it's the same configuration. The challenge, John, that comes down to it is $185,000 base for the chassis and the box, and then $100,000+ in options. That's at the core of it. I mean, it's, everything he said it passes muster with me. I mean, it's all true. I mean, you can see it every day. You see ambulances and going up and down, whether it's, I heard you say four-wheel drive, whether, I don't know that you need a four-wheel drive ambulance, to be candid. But I'm not getting into the minutia. I told you my opinion, I told you where I'm personally at. It's just a costly endeavor. That's,
And is there like only one company that does this, like sells these things? Or is this another municipal thing where it just, how does that happen?
There's basically 3 main vendors in the area.
Yeah.
The one we would be using is one we have been using.
Yeah.
That we've had very good luck with, and they're actually able to get the Ford chassis, which, because the other issue, regardless of what we purchase, there could be a lengthy wait if we go somewhere else if the chassis is simply not available.
You said Ford chassis?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And Sean, I'm not opposed if you want to send me some specs, and we'll take a look at it.
honestly, John, I respect that, I do. But I wasn't looking to do your job, honestly. I wasn't. It was-
This was the job that we did. We're just trying to,
And I guess, honestly, we've known each other for the better part of like 15 years now, kids inquire and whatnot. I seldom say I don't like a number on the page without asking questions, and this is one of those times where I just don't like the number.
To be perfectly candid with you, when I saw the number on this, I didn't like it either. I still don't like it. And in fact, I was talking to my ambulance committee on this and saying, what the hell are we getting with this thing? And they showed it to me, and then I was doing the comparisons with the area towns. It's the cost, it's what they're going for.
Is there any in between light duty and, you know, like, is there like a middle ground?
Medium duty.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the red herring. Candidly, the chassis price is the chassis price. That's like BFHD, big fat hairy deal. That's the $185. It's everything else that goes into that $185. So the challenge that I had put forth for us, as we talk about this number, take that off the top of your head. Doesn't, like, who cares about the duty, you know?
Yep.
Who gives a duty about the duty? So the bigger point comes down to is what do you need to make this functional? And as a professional rescuer, the community, AKA the fire department, we want to use this safe system for cot loading because it's going to preserve and protect.
Yes.
And the challenge is going to be, okay, great, let's just look at the, ambulance associated comp before, ambulance associated comp after to see if you're getting an ROI. That's between he and the FOG, right, Financial Officers Group, not me. I'll just ask the question next year. Or whatever, I'll ask it from the peanut gallery, or if I get a sycophantic plea from Mr. Riley, maybe from here. The biggest point comes down to is, so add 50 grand into the $185, it's 235. That's still a far cry from 318,000. The 350 also has some portable radios to support it and some little other ambulance-related stuff, I get it. But I'm using it as 350, I don't want to misstate it, it's a $314,000 quote for the ambulance, thereabouts. But the ask is 350. So anywho, it comes down to, like, forget the duty, because you're going to shave 25 grand off a chassis, it's still an F550. It still has to be extra support for the weight of the box. Like, all that still stands. It's the stuff that you're putting on top of that. And that's,
Basically, it's the options that are more money.
drives me insane.
So like, say, I know it's not like leather seating, but like,
Yeah,
it would be
it-
like looking at something like that, like, can we get cloth instead of, obviously, I understand that we're not doing cloth and leather,
No,
but
it-
like, to simplify
be
it. So
cleanable,
basically,
yeah.
is there a way to, I guess, tone down the options so that it is,
Again, I'll look at it, and we're not
that
building
it's,
a
so
Taj
it's better
Mahal,
than the
it's-
2002, but maybe not quite 350? Not
I will
quite,
bring this
but-
back to the committee and see what we can do. I understand where you're coming from, I absolutely do, and we're not trying to build out the deluxe super, we're just trying to get 15 years out of this vehicle.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Which, because it gets very expensive when we go to repair these,
Yeah.
whether it's, seats or, and that's probably a poor example, but,
Yeah.
or the cabinetry or whatever, that we're looking at adding, and I think I gave you the copy of the radio price on this, that's part of this overall purchase, and they're not cheap vehicles.
And is it possible, I know I came late, is it possible to say to the people, we want this ambulance right here, we want to pay $280? I just threw out a number, like, literally, I have no, we want this ambulance, we want to pay $308, whatever, you know what I mean, like, or is that not how this system works?
Is there a number the finance committee is comfortable with? I mean,
So
I'm
it's
I'm
not,
kinda throwing it
it's
right
not,
back at you.
yeah, truly, I think we could probably come to a number that everybody's comfortable with. I just didn't know, and I ask Rick this stuff all the time, I didn't know if that's even how it works. Like, I don't know if, I don't do municipal bids, you know what I mean? Like, I'm in the private sector where I do exactly what I just said to you, and if somebody says no, I hang up the phone, and there's also more than 3 people usually that do this. You know what I mean? Even in my sector, that's pretty, scarce. But my point is that even a possibility, or is it, can you not do you get in trouble for like doing that?
No, I mean, we begin removing things from the vehicle, but at that point, there was a reason they were added into it.
Yeah.
The
But not
main-
even removing anything,
No, the point is-
removing nothing.
Is you're buying off a bid list, and if you're trying to, we'll say, negotiate or undercut a bid list,
Yeah, that won't
it's a
happen.
public process, everybody.
That's what I mean, like, those are the questions that I have, like,
Everybody's gonna know. And what does that do to a vendor? Yeah, they can't be providing the same product to one town or and not the same product to another.
But my bigger question wouldn't even be to the towns. Like, my bigger question would be, do private companies buy this for $285, but they know that, like, Abington's a town and that there are specific things and that they can charge the extra? That's why I ask you the question of, sorry, say it again?
I don't believe they do that, no,
So I'll give you the only example I have. I'm in the aviation industry. It happens so much, it's ridiculous. I deal with private jets. I'm sure this is on TV somewhere. Hopefully it doesn't get too far. But yes, that happens incredibly because the end of the day, the GSA is the government and they do pay extra money. So if I'm dealing with a guy who owns a hedge fund, he doesn't let me do that. You know what I mean? Like, there is he calls 15 other people if he has to, or he'll call my mom. He'll figure out some way of getting it cheaper.
but these are on the state public.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, those are the things that,
There's more
like,
transparency with that?
100%, and those are the things that I don't, like, know, that if somebody charges you for a 115 volt outlet, $300, is that normal? It's very difficult for me, you know what I mean? Maybe somebody on the private sector can get it for $100. Those are basically my questions. Can you negotiate with these people? Which, it sounds like it's difficult to negotiate with them.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's more of, these are the options, these are the prices for the options, and we can choose whether specific options are included or
Correct.
not included.
Correct, and that affects the overall, use of the vehicle. I'm not opposed to taking this
Yeah.
back and looking at it, to be
And we
honest.
have to use the state bid list, right? We gotta do that, or no?
Well, and do it ourselves, give it your own specifications and bid. She said, we want a couple vendors out there. The state already did the work for us.
The what?
The state already did the work for us. They've already done the bid specifications.
Can we say thank you? And,
Yeah. So, well, the, they're doing.
no?
They're probably getting kicked.
In answer as well to Sean, can we simply reuse the current stretcher? The current stretcher on Rescue 2 is the old,
No, that wasn't the question. The question was, if the new Stryker system is out of service for maintenance, battery issue, or whatever, can you interchange an existing stretcher to keep the brand-new ambulance in service? Or do you need to use another power cot with the self-loading system?
we actually had Stryker in the station earlier this week, and, we're going over all of the, the what-ifs, the power fails, the battery's gone, something's jammed in the mechanism. What this is, just to back up for everybody else, the stretchers, first they begin lifting themselves up. Ultimately, this is for the patient's safety and the firefighter paramedic safety. People are getting larger. Leave it at that. So to assist us in lifting them up,
No, it's,
you're not a large person, believe me.
no, you need the power lift.
Okay, so that's step one, is
So-
lifting it simply straight up. Step two is the stretcher, the ambulance actually has a mechanism where it reaches out almost like a, this is gonna sound awful, but it's a good analogy, almost like the arms of a trash truck when it goes to pick up a dumpster. It reaches out, grabs onto the stretcher, and pulls it into the vehicle for you. So the lifting is all mechanical, doing it on its own. That's what we're looking for. The new specs kind of are somewhat requiring that, but it's safer all around. However, it's an expensive system. When we were talking to Stryker, which is one of the vendors, there's different vendors out, but
Yeah.
we were talking to this particular vendor, and we posed those questions. When everything goes wrong, can we still use it? And there are manual overloads over all of this.
Overrides, yeah.
Overrides to get it on, yeah.
Okay, so-
Different question.
Yep.
So that stretcher that you're buying, that's the power load, power lift stretcher, is now disabled. You have another Stryker stretcher that was not part of this lift system. Can that other Stryker stretcher be used? Heck, I have 5 of them sitting in my driveway, I'm just going around, and you say, damn, Sean, I need a stretcher, could I borrow it? Can you use that stretcher in
This
this
system.
ambulance with this system? That's the.
I do not know.
I don't know
believe so,
either.
But I don't want to confirm it. Because that question came up, there was an issue between an area town and our stretcher, interoperability with it. Ultimately, we ended up not doing that, but I think it was unfamiliarity between the two different devices was the main reason not. So I don't have the actual answer on that for you.
That was the basis of my inquiry, saying, well, then you'd have to, because spares are necessary, plan for contingencies.
At that point, we get another ambulance. realistically. I mean, at that point, the ambulance is out of service. And that could happen now, if for whatever reason. If any part of that ambulance, whether mechanical or the stretcher, at that point, you'd almost have to call a second one.
If I run out of ink, this is a bad example because this is a digital pencil. If I run out of ink, I just replace the ink. I can do that on demand. So in my ambulances today, whether I'm doing an intercept, working with another community, I can put their stretcher in the back of my ambulance without any issues whatsoever. The challenge is that can you put a Rockland stretcher in the back of an Abington truck? Can you put the stretcher in Rescue 2 in the back of this new truck? That's the ultimate question, because I don't agree that because the stretcher is down for a mechanical issue, that the entire ambulance should be
Well, until we
down.
repair it, or we're.
But the ambulance shouldn't be down, right?
Right,
Because
I
you
think-
still can use a very expensive ambulance. If it's limited by, like, the weakest link happens to be the stretcher loading system, then that's not a solid system.
We've also really never had this happen with any of our ambulances, that it's gone down, so. And
Well,
just to
first-
forewarn you, and I think I mentioned it last time when I was here, assuming this all works, I'd like to retrofit A4 next year with the same stretcher system, which would be another request in another year. I'm not doing all that in 1 year, obviously, but I think I mentioned that when I was here last time. But again, for the same reason, for the patient and the firefighter safety. Because ultimately, if we get one serious back injury for a firefighter paramedic, and they could be out, 6 months to a year, that is an extremely expensive injury. Whether it's back or anything. So we're hoping this will pay for itself eventually.
On average, how many people are out for injury?
Right now, I have 0. Knock on
Just average, like, yeah. Like yearly, I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, for different
Yeah,
reasons, but
Yep.
we, maybe half a year, but that's kind of total. I mean, we have been very fortunate, and I think a lot of this is because of running the 6-man shifts, to be honest with you. I mean, I know some of you remember
Yes.
the
Lot of
chronic
injuries.
injuries. We also have younger firefighters, but I think we're diluting the workload by having extra additional personnel available. So we really haven't had those issues. I mean, anybody could slip and fall right now. You could get hit by a vehicle, you could fall off a ladder, anything could happen. I'm not minimizing that, but
Yeah.
we really haven't had chronic injuries for a while. On average, yeah, anybody could be out any time, but we really haven't had it for a bit.
So pretty much you're able to staff it with 6-man shifts the majority of the time?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's, my entire budget is predicated on maintaining 6 firefighter paramedics on
Yeah.
duty for Abington at all times. That's my entire budget. It's all based on that. The figure I presented for you, again, I gave you all of the specs from the vehicle, the chassis, the radios, the stretcher system. This is really what the area towns have also been purchasing. And we're not simply copying one town to another. We came up with our own, but in totality with that, it really is comparable to kind of the industry standard around here. We tend to hold on to our vehicles for a long time. We squeeze a lot of life out of them. So we want to purchase vehicles up front that should give us that. Sean, I understand where you're coming from. I think we may simply not agree on this, but when we're maintaining vehicles for 15 years, this is what the costs have been. I can take this back again to the committee. We can look through this. When do you need the final figure? Or is there a figure your committee would be comfortable with if we somehow try to meet that? It's a dangerous road to go down
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I'm definitely not
I'm
like,
just trying to, whatever it takes to get an ambulance this year, because we're gonna be down to 2 ambulances with no spare.
see, he's an expert at this, right? Or at least at ambulances. I know nothing about them. My only point, and I've made this to a lot of people that sit here, I don't want to rehash all the stuff from that, but we bought a 3-wheeler for 26 grand last year. It's a little tough, right? For me, not you, wasn't your department, but for me, that's a little expensive for what the actual thing really is. Could we have been a little bit more frugal and said, hey, could we get an ATV and a stripper, whatever it is, 2 separate ones, and 16 grand's the total, we save 10 grand. My whole point is to think about stuff like that all the time. I brought to last week, we're buying 2 stand-up lawnmowers for $18,000. It's a little crazy, $9,000 for it, and not saying that it's not a really good one, but do we need the absolute, and I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking in general, the mindset, do we need the absolute best thing that's ever being made? And with me sitting here, right, and looking up the best stand-up lawnmower that I can have, is I find it for $6,900, $7,000 that I can buy right now. That's why I ask about the bid list and all these other things, because I don't know how they're priced to you guys, and I don't know if maybe you have no say in it. My bigger question is, can everybody trim it down a little bit so we can do even more in this town? That's my thought. And with everybody in every single department. I do it at my company every day, right? And for me, I don't think there's a specific number, because I don't know. I truly have never built an ambulance. You know what I mean? I don't know. Could there be an ambulance that's 200,000 or 250,000 that's really good, that would work out well? If there one to 300,000, that would be really good to work out well. Would there be one for 170? Again, I would have to lean on him to tell me a little bit, or you to tell me if any of those other things if you can get most of those things accomplished with a different one. That would be my mindset. And it's not just you. I've been trying to say this to other things that are being asked for. I get a little bit of pushback, but then again, I also don't know the buying process either, and that's why I go to Rick and I say, well, can you call 10 different people right now and say, all right, this is what I have. These are the specs. I'm going to email over to you, and I want to pay $290 for this. Have a good day.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
That's why as a town, and I'm a resident as well, this affects me as well. We have a committee to oversee the entire process, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. The one last thing I think I would say on this, that just to kind of keep in mind, our engine 3, which is still our current engine right now, I did not purchase it, that was prior to me. That was purchased, it was a demo vehicle, we kind of got a deal on it, to be honest with you. I have spent more money on that vehicle because we kind of, I don't want to say we bought a cheap vehicle up front, because nothing's ever cheap. However, quality-wise, I have been putting so much money into trying to maintain that vehicle to keep it running, when if we had maybe just put a little bit more in it up front, and we wouldn't have been having these problems. When the new engine goes in service, hopefully next week or whenever we have it, usually we drop each engine down a notch, so basically engine 3 should be the primary engine on the Station 2. That's going to be reserve, because I have more confidence in an older engine with less mechanical problems in it than the current engine that we're running right now. I don't want to get into this with an ambulance. That's, if we begin, if we try to get a middle of the road, and we'll do whatever ultimately the funding is available, I get that, but by beginning to look at getting a lesser quality vehicle, we're simply either not going to get the number of years out of this, or we're going to start putting more money into it when it breaks down. And that could also affect the revenues coming in if it's not in service.
Sure.
Barbara?
John, when you look at the list, is there anything that you say to yourself? Because I completely trust your judgment. I don't think you've ever, and not that I know that Sean does too. You always do a lot of homework when.
And I'd have to go
Come
through the
to our
whole thing,
meetings.
to be honest with you. Yeah.
You know, I don't think you ever ask for anything more than what you absolutely need. When you look at the list, when you look at it, is there anything that, if you were going through it, not being the fire chief and looking at it, is there anything that you say, I wonder if we can not do that?
Yeah, it's a
Or
fair question,
is there-
absolutely.
Is there anything?
I would have to look through it. I mean, I didn't study it in depth coming
Right,
here
right.
tonight.
Didn't memorize
And
it
honestly,
before.
most of my paramedic committee and mechanics put this together. I gave them a general broad line. I was looking through it, and, you know, I will go through it deeper and see. But really,
That's all I would ask.
this is pretty much
That's-
mirroring what our A4 is, and we've had luck with that.
A4, you said?
The current
2014.
one, the 2014. My philosophy on apparatus, because I was heavily involved in building out the tower truck and the new engine that we just got, I dumb these things down, big time. And they're still expensive. I think you all know what both of those apparatus cost.
How much do we pay for that one?
I'm not into the computers on control panels like that, because I just, you know, I think that's gonna break. Some of these are coming standard with that now, and.
You don't have the choice. No, that's what I'm saying. Is there stuff on there that you look at and say, you know, this may be an option that we don't need, because I want everything that you would think I might need on the ambulance if you were picking me
A lot of
up.
these are lighting issues where, both internally and externally, I'll go through it, there's no question,
I looked at that company
And if
Wheelan,
you-
that company Wheelan,
It's the lighting company.
yeah, they.
It's an emergency
I'd
lighting
buy their
company.
stock for the record, because those guys seem to be able to charge.
But if
a
you
good
looked for
penny.
that and you came back and
And there
said,
are-
I don't see, then I am comfortable with.
And then maybe should we look at, I mean, I know we've used them before, but maybe should we look into, you said there were 2 other companies, should we?
In Mass, there are 2 other companies in Mass. There are a plethora of emergency vehicle operators, a plethora of them. but they-
So should we look into a couple of
We
them?
also have to get these maintained, which is why we try to, like, when we send these out for
But
service.
I mean, 3, I feel like 3
Well,
bids would be enough, like, I don't think we need to, like, go crazy.
but what I'm getting at is, when these do go down, and they do for
Of course.
different issues, we try to get a fairly local service vendor, because if I'm sending these to Connecticut or anywhere else where some of these are, we try to stay closer as well. That's not the only reason. We've actually had great luck with this particular company, but
Are these not, department after department comes in here and sings the praises of the highway department in maintaining their vehicles? Are these not things that the highway department would be qualified to work on?
they would be qualified, but sometimes, and especially if it's a warranty issue, it has to go to the dealer. Or it has to go to the
Warranty
local.
makes sense, yes.
Yeah. And we're running into that
We
now.
still have a
still
warranty
with-
on the 2002? That was a joke. Doctor?
The point that I was going to raise earlier is that the chassis is the chassis, and that's why I took from my view, I took that argument off the table, right? That's, the chassis is the chassis. That's the part that usually is going to fail. It is infrequent, seldom is the best word to use, that you'd have an issue with the actual ambulance part of the manufacturing. Not saying it can't happen, but it's so infrequent. Majority of your maintenance is on the drivetrain and with the chassis as a whole. So to that end, that's your Ford dealer, right? So those, I think there is an opportunity. I'm not in a position to give a number. The town manager is the person who says, this is a number. So it's a supported and endorsed number. And again, I'm 1 out of 18,000 voters in the community. I just don't like the number because I feel as though it is a little thick in the published options. There's nothing that's going to deteriorate or detract from patient care, because you have A4, which doesn't have all of these options, right? There are other options that are in here, that you could figure that, you know what, we can do without this, because we could still provide the exact same superlative care that we provide today in a safe environment and still get 15 years out of it. We can do that. So honestly, Chief, I think, I don't know enough to tell you what the right number is. I know what the wrong number is. And that's why this jumped off the page to me, is that I personally, the base price of the vehicle is your chassis in the box, and the polish on it is the 128,554, which is the published options, which a large piece of that, the largest piece of that is the stretcher system. So take that off the table. Now let's look at the other $75,000 of other options. And is there a good faith opportunity to reduce that cost? So the chief's department, which is a mobile department, doesn't ask for capital, right? It's life safety capital that he asks for. I need SCBA equipment, I need turnout gear, so it's not like we're dealing with capital intensivity, right? It just is the quantity of the capital that gets required. I'm pretty confident in my lifetime, I'm not gonna see a request for a new tower truck. I'm pretty confident
Nor in my
that,
lifetime, I hope.
and we plan to live until like 100, just being honest, so. So the point here is that there just is, right? The one area where I can just raise my hand and say there is something that I know that we can do a little better. And it's not, I don't want a choice as to how it's gonna get better. And I'm not disrespecting the men and women that were on his committee that were putting this together, but given a different lens,
Right.
would they come back with a different recommendation, yes or no? And still achieve life safety and staff safety and continued sustainable operations? And I think the answer is yes. That's my opinion. I don't wear the vehicles. I don't.
Chief did say he is perfectly willing to go back.
To one up that, actually, and again, this is our responsibility to do it. However, I would extend, if you have time, Sean, would you want to sit down with us and? I'm serious. You know, we can,
John, I'm pleased to have a conversation with you after this.
because I'd be honestly curious to hear what your thoughts are on some of these, because you purchase a lot more ambulances than we do. So if, maybe we can learn from you on this, how, you know, as long as we have something that lasts long, I'd be curious of your input, to be honest with you.
Like I said, I'm pleased to speak with you on the phone.
So as a committee, do we want to say that we will wait to hear back on that before making an official
What's the
recommendation?
deadline for this?
We can say that we have taken no action and make our official recommendation before,
Town meeting.
at
we do it that day?
our meeting before town meeting.
Why
Is
don't we
that
do that?
correct?
Publish your recommendations.
We'll publish the recommendations.
So we can say no
Our
action.
published could be that we take no action.
When's your
Correct.
next meeting?
It's always preferable if you have a positive or negative recommendation or something, but if extenuating circumstances.
Yes.
We can simply say that we're, in the
Yes.
comments, that we're waiting for more information.
Yeah, I think we should
Yes.
do that, and then decide the town meeting.
And then
right before town
explain,
meeting,
you
yeah.
as the chairman would
Yep.
explain on town meeting floor that
Yes.
we were waiting for this information, that blah, 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 and.
Yeah.
Do you have another meeting prior to,
As of right now, if we get through everything tonight, we do not have another meeting before town meeting.
okay.
If we don't, we will have another meeting next week.
If I can try to let you know.
Oh, is that Greg?
I said I'd love another meeting. If we could do another one, that'd be great.
Greg is a fan of multiple meetings, so.
I'll certainly keep you updated on this as soon as we get in.
Yeah,
At a minimum, you're gonna have a meeting earlier that night.
correct.
Yeah,
We will have a
yes.
meeting before town meeting, the hour before town meeting, at minimum, if we do not have one next week. So if you could do that, that would be fantastic. The other discussion that we had for you was the feasibility study?
Yes, for a fire station,
Yes, which is Article 10 of the annual town meeting
and
warrant.
that was for 100,000. That number came from, really what area towns have recently done this was a strong recommendation, because consistently they keep underfunding theirs. So that was a number that was suggested to me by some area towns that have just done this. That number was also somewhat confirmed by getting a couple of soft bids on what this process may cost, and we all felt that that figure would be sufficient to cover it.
Where are you thinking?
I'm sorry?
Where are you thinking?
Where?
Yeah,
It has to go out for bid.
but any
I think
ideas being thrown around at all?
I think
What
they're
do you mean
asking
for the
where
new
within the
fire
town.
station?
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
I thought
part
you
of
meant the
it,
vendor.
No, 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 no.
part of it is that's the purpose of doing the study,
Yeah.
Right.
is
It's
to
just-
figure out
I'm
where.
thinking
The
North
chief-
School, but I don't want
The chief has
them just to
talked
take
to
money.
us about the
Right, yeah.
North School location in the past when he has been in.
Where's that?
But
Right near, like if you're going to Target from our house, it's on the
it's
right-hand side. Do you know where I mean?
Yeah,
off of, yeah.
I know Target, that's about it.
Yeah, right across from Quilly Funeral Home.
Like if you were going, you turn right to go to Target, it's on like where the fork is.
But there could be other locations that I'm not aware of, and again, the
I'm not
study would cover
necessarily
that.
opposed to it. I live right across the street. To
We've been
me,
doing
it's-
some training there
yeah,
and
To
practicing
me,
and
it's better
testings.
than like some of the other options that it, could be turned out.
Wasn't there something about being centralized?
or something.
Is that
That is
central?
kind of centralized.
Yeah,
That is what the study would.
there you go.
Yeah.
And
As
I
well
think-
as that study would cover both of the existing stations to say, okay, let's say if the town does not have the appetite or they don't want to build a fire station, I get that. What would the two current stations need to be brought up to, whatever? And, we should get some information on that as well.
John, what do they have that would be like the equivalent to the new school building, the MSBA, for building a new fire station?
We probably just, let me make sure I have the question correct.
So
What would
is
we do
there
as a town to form a committee on this?
No,
or-
no, 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 I'm sorry.
The
So,
question-
you know, is there a state?
There is not.
There is not.
Yeah. And I have been checking on that. And to be honest with you, would Representative Sullivan able to possibly get some of the funding on that? Because she was also looking on that. I applaud her efforts and her ability to be able to try to pull this off, because that's not easy to do. There really is no state either matching grants or any grants for fire stations. At one point, they were looking for a combined police-fire station. I think that's a new build, not, but I don't think that came through as well. Because I was dealing, that
Like
question was
when
posed. to
Holbrook
the-
did that, didn't Holbrook do that?
They
Is it
did.
a combined?
There
And
there was
did
a
they
number of
get-
towns that do it.
Did they get assistance with that? Grants?
I do not know. I honestly don't know.
I was just curious.
Yeah, at the
And
time.
the other question that we had, and I'm looking back to town manager and town accountant, was where would this funding be coming from? What would the source
The
be?
intent would be for this to be borrowed money, and presumably if there's a project, it would get rolled into the debt exclusion number from that project. That's how it's typically done, but that's very common way of doing it. So yes, there's a presumption that it's going to lead to a larger building project of some sort.
Wouldn't that be over a very long period of time, though? So could you take money out for that, like the 100,000 now, and then, I don't know, say the station's 5 million, or what, I don't know what they go for, but you can do it over that long of a time period?
You'd be short-term borrowing until you bonding the full project.
I got that. By the way, the combination police and fire, does that work out for those towns? Do they like it? Does it look, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of towns it does. I think that the issue with this town is, I mean, if we look at where the police station is now, it's not really centrally located for us. It's difficult for the fire to get from that location to different parts in town. The police have sector cars, is kind of how they try to pre-stage some cruises out there. For us, because we never know what emergency, what vehicle we have to take, whether it's ambulance, engines, boat, you know, forest fire, what have you. That's not that centralized to the whole town. The North School location, you're right there on 58, 139, we can up Adams to Washington, Spruce into, God knows what they're gonna do with Southfield at some point. That's also gonna change the geographic center of this town as well, potentially.
Southfield?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they do something, so. And I'm not sure if there's land on Central Street right now for what we would need.
Other questions regarding the feasibility study, Article 10? Any other questions for the chief before we let him go?
Really appreciate your time, John.
No, thank you.
Thank
I'll
you
sharpen
very
my
much.
pencil, we'll take a look at this, we'll get in touch
We
with Sean.
appreciate
and
that.
Try to come up with
Really
something in agreement.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations to
Yeah, thank
Laura
you.
for her election back to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to her.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I did write you in as well. I want to just put that on the record.
Continuing on to the other articles that we have taken no action on so far. Looking first at the special town meeting.
Wait, can I say
oh.
something before we go
Yes.
into?
Absolutely.
So just because it's been said to me, like over the past year, a few different times, where people have made comments here or elsewhere about feeling like things are a done deal with the budget. And I don't want anyone to feel like that. And I think this was a really good example of, you know, and even last week, there's, nothing is a done deal. If you feel really strongly, especially like for newer people, if you feel strongly about something, or if you don't agree with something, then you should question it. And nothing is, the town manager, not necessarily Rick, whoever the town manager is that we have, that position comes to our meetings and gives us the information, and we listen to the department heads, and you may not agree with that. And you should say if you don't agree with it. And lots of times, we say we don't agree with something, and the town manager will go back and rework it. And so then we get to town meeting, and we are in a consensus budget, not because we just rubber stamp whatever comes out of the town manager's office, but because we've spent a lot of time and hours going back and forth. And there's a little bit of a notion that we rubber stamp things, and I just want to make sure
Yeah, no,
that we,
to that
there's
point.
times that, you know, now you can't, conversely, you couldn't say to the, or you could, if a department came in and their budget is $100,000, and you don't like that they're gonna spend $20,000 on stamps, crazy, all using really crazy numbers, that they're gonna spend $20,000 on stamps. You know, their budget is their budget, the amount that they're allotted. But you could say, I vote to approve the budget minus $20,000 in the, you know,
In that particular.
ice cream
line
man's
item.
budget. I'm not gonna even use a department. In the ice cream man's
Particular
budget of $100,000, I wanna reduce that budget by $20,000. But then that department head can say, well, you might not want me spending $20,000 on stamps, but I need to spend $20,000 on stamps, so I'm gonna cut it someplace else. That might mean a body, it might mean, you know, personnel, less of a service or something, but we definitely aren't sitting here rubber stamping. And there is absolutely the ability to change anything, and if you feel strongly about it, and everyone else, you get a majority to agree with you, then, you know, it doesn't pass. We vote to not recommend it. So there, it's not a done deal when we get presented the budget. We discuss it, that's why we're here. So I just wanted to.
The value of having a consensus going into town meeting is very important.
Right, but so we should be asking the questions. We're trying to hammer this out before we get there, before we get to town meeting. We should have the questions we should be asking the questions that the residents would be asking, so that when we get to town meeting, we all feel comfortable with what we're recommending for the townspeople to do, because for the majority of the time, the townspeople do go with our recommendation.
And that's, I sent to Matt on what you're talking about, I sent to Matt last week, you sent it to do we have any sort of update on that, where it's people
When we
took the budget down a little bit on each different thing, or?
Oh, yeah, we do have some information.
So,
The one we
I think
covered.
that's actually a really good exercise for people. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm not thinking, not unfortunately, but I try to think about, like, I used to be in finance before this. I mean, I don't know. Everybody who's smart says in the next 2 years, there's gonna be some sort of an issue. And I'm talking really smart, not like anybody that I really know. So,
I'll let you know on this one.
yeah. No, I mean, just really smart guy, and that's, I'm thinking more like that, so we're not sitting here one day saying, you know, all right, well, I'd rather put more money away, so when something like that happens, you don't have to fire somebody.
Right.
And that's my only thing of, I catch a lot of slack for, because I talk about lawnmowers
Or
or
we have
something
to
like
fire
that. And I
less
don't,
somebody.
Right.
it's not like I don't want the guys to have good lawnmowers. I'm not like some goofball who's like, I want, you know, them to be, you know, welding the
Push
lawnmower
wall.
together.
Well, you don't want them
It's
to
just,
push wall.
that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
of, and then when I got on this, finance committee, I heard how bad it was at some point, that like, all departments are down, and I just think that you can forecast or even prepare a little better. I don't know, maybe we did prepare for it, I'm not sure, but that's just my sort of idea.
We rely heavily on state aid.
Right.
In
Exactly, and that-
communities the size of ours. But even more to my point, last week we had the town manager's budget was going to put how much
$30,000.
into the finance committee's reserve?
reserve
You know,
fund.
and as a board, typically, that account is used, it's always been used for
Unplanned.
unplanned things that just like come up. And so we voiced our opinion, and the town manager went back and changed it. So we'll go to town meeting being on the same page with that. Not because he brought it in front of us and we said, okay, do whatever you want. It's a done deal anyways. We said, we don't agree with that. And so it gets worked out beforehand, then we get to town meeting and you know, hopefully we're in
A lot
agreement.
of work goes in between the town manager and the financial officers in the town and the committee and the department heads to go through all of that before we get to town meeting.
I was gonna say, one of the other things too is, you know, I think one of the things I'm cognizant of, and I know you are too, is, you know, you have a couple hundred people in the hall, and how much collective time and energy do you want to put these people through?
Mhm.
Something that just may not be that significant. So I think we try to be to bring 200 people back for another night, to argue over, $30,000 in a $53 million budget, that's just not a good use collectively of people's time. I just want to respect that. That's why it helps us to be together when we go to town meeting. If we have a fundamental issue of principle, that's different.
Mr. Town Moderator.
Yeah, if I could just, again, thank all of you for the time you guys put in as volunteers, you're not paid to do this. And I think, as I spoke to each one of you, when you wanted to get on this committee, I asked you a couple of questions, and one of the things was I wanted you to feel comfortable and confident enough that if you felt you were in the minority opinion, that you would speak up and ask your question, but also if you were in the majority opinion, that you would pay deference and respect the minority opinion. Because you'd be amazed, maybe you hear it too, how many people watch this on cable TV, your meetings. And you guys do a great job, I think, of asking the question that the person's yelling at the television. And that helps. So these people who are watching these meetings are getting all the information that you're getting. So when they do get to town meeting, they already know why, the ambulance is valued at what it is, or what you cut and why, which is very helpful. So sometimes I've seen it plenty of times, you guys will ask the question that you ask every year, just so people at home can hear the answer again, and that's incredibly helpful. So again, I want to thank you and encourage you to keep that debate going. If it comes at the end that you make a 9-0 vote to support it, that's usually a result because you had a great debate. But if you have a 5-4 vote, that's not a problem either. So keep up the good work, but I got to thank you, because this is one of the most informative boards, but also one of the boards, as you know, it takes a lot of time out of your family life and home life, so thank you again.
So that was my
That's
spiel,
good.
that we can,
Okay.
always.
Other comments before we move on to the remaining articles? You want to come forward? You want Sue to come with you? First one, special town meeting. Any news on the bargaining agreement for Article 4?
Yes and no. We have a collective bargaining agreement that has been approved by the Board of Selectmen. It still has to be ratified by the
union.
by the Police Association, yes. And I need my glasses.
The annual? Or
No, special.
Right? The special.
That's special Article
5, 10,
4.
11, okay.
Okay, number 4?
Correct.
Oh, yes, that was 4, yes, okay.
Yep.
And do you have any specific questions? Because we have some handouts for you that may make some of this
Handouts would be
a
great.
bit easier,
We love handouts.
which,
So you're still waiting on a number for 4?
that is correct, yes.
We're
so we
waiting on
can probably-
ratification.
Waiting on ratification by the police.
Ratification
Just
would
in
give
the
us
in
numbers.
the interest of time, so
Do
we
we-
should just wait to revisit that until
Yes.
Yes.
right before town
Yes.
meeting? Okay.
So, going back to last week's questions, which were obviously probably the most important ones of the day, what are the funding sources or proposed funding sources associated with an overall spending plan?
Thank you.
And let these get around it here a little bit. One is a narrative, the other one is
Well, these are all for
a
me.
spreadsheet.
Yes.
Only for you, Barbara. Yeah, some of it is a little repetitive.
Yeah, it's a whole packet. It's not
Budget
one.
summary,
Okay.
budget
not
summary.
I looked through, I was like, these are all different.
Right.
So,
The warrant articles, other than, we did add the one regarding a police management study.
Okay.
And I have an example of one, and somebody also asked, I forget who, about the requirements of the accreditation program, because I think that came up as well. There's an accredited department,
would need
what's
2 more.
different about this, okay? So I've got that handout too, but I think that would be further on down the road. I think in the meantime, if we, want to focus on proposed revenue sources, that
one more.
Yeah.
would be helpful in,
Super.
okay, I was looking for my ATM, it's stapled. Details. Okay, I don't know if you want me to go through each first, and then we can look at how it adds up on a spreadsheet. How would you prefer, Mr. Chairman?
That sounds good.
Okay. And just as a summary, the goal here, ultimately, this would get us at the ability to put about $425,000 in stabilization, and about $80,000 in our other post-employment benefits trust. And so on the special town meeting, as you know, the first one would be from existing funds and the fire expense. Article 2, post-employment benefits. Some would be, post-employment benefits for retiring employees. As you know, it's broken up between the water retained earnings, and there'd be approximately $30,000 from the current unemployment line item, which is funded at $70,000 and has not been utilized at all this year, as I
Good to hear.
or very little.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Article 3 for $45,000 for the landfill monitoring. That would be proposed as a transfer from a liability insurance line item. Collective bargaining, we just discussed. Snow and ice, $341 from free cash.
It's better than the number from us.
I was just gonna say, I
Last week
hesitate
was
to say that.
370, so.
I don't guarantee that number, just as a,
I
exactly.
hope so, it is May. but-
Let's hope
Exactly.
that stays.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was just talking the other day with my sister who lives in Michigan, and it was snowing there, so.
You can tell her to keep it
It's-
there.
It's good not to be
absolutely.
in
I did.
Michigan, right?
I very much did.
Article 6, we was rescinding the ambulance enterprise fund, and the 7, 8 are from golf.
Golf enterprise.
right. Article 9, that's $40,000 for repairs at Island Grove. The designated revenue source was gonna be, we're transferring from a unused article, and at this stage, because that's not clear what that is, and that was a courtesy that I submitted, that would, we proposed that the unused article, and what was that from? So what specific article?
HVAC article that we had last year. We
Okay.
got the Green Communities grant, so we didn't need the article.
Okay. So at this point, we'd be recommending that that article be transferred to stabilization rather than this project at this time. Particularly because, John Stone, I don't say he's not supportive, but he believes that if we're going to invest in facilities there are better places to put the town's money. And probably pursuing CPA funds in the future would be the best way to do that.
Do you know what the
Which-
repairs were?
Which,
It said it in there.
this is the
The
pavilion.
pavilion,
Pavilion,
snack
yeah.
shack, and
Thank you.
band.
So
Correct.
that has
We said we would
changed,
pass over it.
that has changed to Article
Well, it's up to
There's
you guys
always
whether you
9.
wanna keep
9?
it or
It was
not,
9.
or 10.
Says, okay, no, sorry, I was looking
Right.
at the wrong
Okay.
ones. My bad.
Yes, that's a good summary, but you would,
Yep.
Pulling that article off, or are you just going to pass on?
We are going to recommend passing over that article.
and therefore, the funds, the designated funding source could be used to,
To go to
Add
stabilization.
to stabilization.
correct, right.
And that would be a great project for the.
And that is included, sorry. to
It's
interrupt.
included in the
That would
total.
be a great project for the
Community preservation.
CPA.
Right. I think it
And that was
was,
included in the 425.
Yes.
that's part, yes, that's correct. It was the Article 10 stabilization amount, that includes free cash, transfer from free cash and the FY19 unused article funds. And as you can see, OPEB
But
would be.
I just have a question, like, say all these people come and they vote and they like really want that article, then what happens? Because then Article 10's wrong?
Well,
You know what I mean,
then,
like,
We have to find the funding for it.
oh, okay.
Well,
so
yeah,
then-
well-
Okay, I'm just saying, like, all these people,
You can't put more in, but you can
Right.
reduce an article,
Right.
so you could.
okay,
reduce
so you'd have to
the-
reduce
Sure,
stabilization or something, okay, I'm just curious.
let's see, okay, other post-employment benefits, like free cash, I know that, really, between that and stabilization is where we wanted to put our funds away, it's been a couple of years. The 40,000 to supplement the existing, the dog park, project, I know we've said all along that could be a little, that 40,000 is probably a little bit on the high side, but we're not exactly sure what utilities are gonna cost.
Utilities in the sense of lights.
Water, electricity.
And
Yeah,
the
it's
source
not
for
a
that
matter
would be
Our liability insurance
money
line
that
item.
is in the liability.
Right, transfer of,
Transfer of funds,
sure,
not free cash. Okay.
that's correct.
So the only thing on the special that we are looking to spend from free cash, the only things to spend from free cash are the snow and ice, the stabilization, and OPEB.
And starting in on the annual town meeting, and like I said, at the end, we can, go through the spreadsheet, and you can see how it adds up from that perspective. Well, the budget, you've already voted to recommend the budget as, and what you have in front of you is really just is repetitive, just so everybody continues to be on the same page. And that would be raised and appropriated in the appropriate enterprise funds from the sewer and other
Yep.
entities. Article 2 would be raise and appropriate.
And that would be
And
general fund.
Right. And Article 3 is where, obviously, there was questions from the last meeting. 3 cruises would be from free cash. And the chief did discuss with me that, yeah, that's 3 cruises. It's the year for 3 cruises. They're about 47,000 apiece. And some of the striping, marking and radios, some of that's probably going to have to come out of his operating budget if necessary. But he also said if push comes to shove and he has to live with 2 this year, he will, but it just pushes it off a year. And like one of the things, and going back to Greg's point, we don't know what next year's going to look at right now, so. But at this point, it fits into the plan. Voting machines would be from free cash. The Council on Aging roof would be from free cash. That's something we had discussed internally about whether or not that would be, maybe it could be bundled with other items for a borrow, but, once again, it just, we have the money, it just made more sense, just to pay for it right now. The 2 new mowers, those were originally requested at $19,000, and in light of what had been requested, John Stone had gone back and done some review, and he believes $16,000 will be sufficient.
Great.
That's one of those items that, just as well as the catch basin gantry, and I have a picture of that if anybody's interested. That is not a standalone item. That's actually part of goes, on the vehicle. It's pretty heavy duty. That's, again, the $75,000 for that from free cash is something that doesn't want to really move at this point. The dam failure study, that's an engineering study, that's a quote. The Sanders,
That's a typo, it's supposed to say 20.
yeah, I was gonna say, geez, that guy's real cheap. $20,000, that was at 25, that's another
It was 20.
situation where he,
Oh, man, didn't go from 25 to 2.
yeah, no, that'd be nice. No.
That would have either been some
That's right.
really good
They
work
really
or
negotiate-
some
Wow,
really,
they
really
must have
bad
called
work
Greg.
up front.
Right, exactly. Or he'd have to blame Greg, one or the other, so, when he's out there
That's always the
pushing,
way to
when
go.
he's out there pushing a Toro, exactly.
Pushing the old
Right,
timey
so-
blade mower.
Right, so the mowers, the dam failure study, and catch basin gantry would be from free cash. Sanders would be to be raised and appropriated. The MS4 permit, that's $94,500. That probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have our engineer in to discuss that with both the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, exactly what that is. That's a very labor-intensive internally project, too, and so again, it might be, I know you're not intending to
So-
meet again, but that's something that over some period of time, whenever it works for the committee going into next year.
Remind me what that is?
That is stormwater control. That's a national mandate.
Or the covers,
No,
Or
it's the
for
entire,
the community as a
yeah,
whole.
community, the whole watershed. It's
Stormwater.
how
I think
stormwater
he
is
explained it to
managed.
us
Yeah,
when
he
we-
did-
He
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 talked it
explained, he
through.
talked about it
He
when we
did
were
it to re-
here.
okay.
He did
Yeah.
he did a
I don't
pretty good
remember.
job.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
but he did go through it.
The question that I had on that one is this a one-time permit, a permit that we have to renew on a recurring basis?
Yes, it has to stay in place. You have to have it updated on as far as we know right now, that the mandate is never going to go away. This is intended to get us to the requirements of the mandate for permitting, and then presumably there'll be some ongoing work, engineering and internal work to maintain that permit.
How long is the permit good for? Do you know?
Well, I don't think, permitting's,
Like a
permit's
yearly
kind of more of the terminology.
Oh, okay.
You know, you don't get a permit to
Being
stick on the
up to
wall.
code, essentially.
It's in staying up to code, exactly.
So my,
Right.
you're
my,
complying with what you're
Okay.
supposed
Sure, it's not like a license, it sounds
okay,
like
so it's
that,
not
but
like-
it's.
so
Yeah.
I think that was something that was confusing for us
Yeah.
with this, is it came across as being something that was being paid to essentially be licensed, be
Okay, so
permitted.
it's-
Right, no.
And the question was, if that's going to be a recurring thing, it probably shouldn't be a capital item,
That's-
depending on how frequently
I
it's
don't-
recurring.
It
That's
works
a-
kind of
but-
like your landfill capping, it's
Yeah.
like if you
Yeah.
get, you know, big costs in the beginning,
Exactly.
and then you're gonna have just review going from that
Right.
point forward.
So,
Yes, but it's hard to believe the federal government would make this hard to understand, but in this case.
shocking.
That's right. So that would be,
Speaking from the healthcare industry perspective.
fuel station upgrades, fire pickup truck, I think you've heard about that, ballistic.
Those are all free
Right, the
cash.
granite curbing would be free cash. The Woodsdale parking lot would be from free cash, and the others, as you know, from retained earnings. So the two items that would be from raised and appropriated would be the Sanders and the carpet replacement. And again, as you know, to some extent, this is a shell game, how things work. The carpet replacement was originally at 160. Other estimates are lower than that, in the 130 range, so, you know, there's no bid list for this. This has to be bid, so you want to, when you make an estimate, you have to you want to make sure you have enough, so you're not unable to do a project over $5,000. So that has come down from the earlier estimates. And also in light of the fact that between the House 2 budget and, which has somewhat more local aid, and also has a reduction in assessments, there's about $170,000 of additional spending capacity from state aid. So using that for capital expense rather than putting into the operating budget seemed to make some sense, because we didn't predicate the operating budget on that. So that's Article 3. And again, once again, when we're done, we'll go through the spreadsheet. Article 4, you're aware of that. We have updated to make sure that the $1,000 for the police revolving fund is now gone. Collective bargaining to be determined. We have 2. We've got the DPW and the managers group, which
Any
we-
progress there, or
Yeah, those are
finalizations?
correct. Those are all but completed, correct. So,
So those are things that we will expect to
correct,
vote on at our meeting before town meeting,
yes.
the night of the 20th. 20th?
We're on
20.
5.
5.
I just asked before, is that Article 4, the revolving funds, no changes to the prior year?
There,
Small changes.
Any increases?
Um,
There's no increase
no.
in spending limit.
There
There's
was-
an increase in
There was a
building.
removal of one, which we just talked about, the
Correct.
marijuana fines, and then the breakdown of the building department fund in how it is allowed to be distributed.
Just something back on my, because I think if there's an increase, it has to be voted differently.
Oh, like a
Yeah,
two-thirds or a.
no
It's
increases.
like a separate vote to like create the account or increase the account.
Gotcha.
So we're just doing, continuing on, I think it can all go together as it is.
Yep, no increases.
Article 6, raised and appropriated, Article 7, CPA. Article 8, I mean, you spoke about in length here with the chief. That's not going to, impact any of the other spending capacity, because that will, again, either be a borrow or a lease. Probably a borrow would seemingly make more sense at this point.
Article 9 is
Article 10.
health imperatives, raise and appropriate.
Quick question, again, might be, for a lease, would we have to like pay to fix it, or would that be covered in the lease?
No,
We'd be responsible for the repairs.
From the start? So there wouldn't be, there'd be nothing that would be like,
It's
okay.
not the
Yeah,
same.
I got you.
Not the same
That's why I'm
kind of
asking.
lease.
Yep, gotcha. Oh, I
they
understand.
don't even wash it for you once a month, unfortunately.
If you lease the vehicle, you're gonna
Not
be
worth it.
responsible for the first payment in this budget. And if you borrow, you won't be responsible to make the first payment until a year from now. So
You
that
also-
lease payment is not anywhere in this.
You also have more flexibility with a borrow in terms of what the
Rates.
the amortization schedule would be, rather than, 5, 6, or 7 years, and, that's what you gotta pay.
time, right?
Yeah.
Right, right. I'm sorry, oh yeah, Article 10, the fire feasibility, we discussed that a little bit earlier about that, but it intended to be a borrow as ultimately part of a larger project.
I think we can skip down to Article 18.
Okay, I'm with you. The zoning bylaw review, funding would be to be raised and appropriated, as well as 19 Griffin's Dairy survey.
Wait a minute, why did you have a question on 18, Matt?
No, I was saying we skip down to 18.
Oh, okay.
No question on it.
And the next article would be Article 25. And again, 30,000 for management analysis of, that would be of the police department. Again, I wasn't gonna make a bunch of copies, like 35 pages, of just an example of what type of, I'm not sure if I brought it with me. Yeah, this is, what the Collins Center, I don't know if I know you don't have a lot of time to look at it, but the Collins Center, UMass Boston has done some of these. There are other private firms that do similar. That one was for the town of Harvard. It cost $15,000. Department's half the size, so it was kind of hard to, we don't have quotes. I've got about 5 vendors that have contacted me. Again, the other request was for a copy of the requirements of police accreditation program, and feel free to pass those down. Give you a sense of what the department has to go through on a 3-year basis. So to the extent that the committee is inclined to recommend this expenditure, that would be, the funding source would be to be raised and appropriated, as well would be Article 26, supplementing public safety for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And the only thing new on here is the Article
Is
25.
the Article 26. 25?
25.
25, okay.
And what happened? Usually you have things to the end.
So- Question to our secretary. If what we voted on as 25 last time is now 26, do we have to re-vote because the number has changed? Do you know? No? Okay.
You can just note it in the minutes.
Okay. So, what was previously Article 25, when we voted on it last week, is now Article 26, and there is a new Article 25, which we will vote on tonight.
I'm sorry, I don't want to leave anything on the table. The chief, the feasibility study for the fire thing, you said North Station. I know somebody said something to me that was not talking to you, North Station. If the consensus is North Station, do we have to like pay $100,000 to kind of come to the same conclusion that it's going to end up being North Station? I'm so
He
sorry.
does mean
Yeah, I
North
don't.
Station.
No, he's gonna move,
Half the
he's gonna
stuff that
actually
comes
move
out of
to
my mouth
Boston
is.
in North Station.
So as the chief was saying, the feasibility study will, what we're paying for that will be a study to determine what the proper housing of the fire department is for the town moving forward. It's like when we did the new school study to determine what we should do, and they came back with, I think it started out as 27 different plans or possibilities, which they then narrowed down to 3 and stuff. So that even if we are saying that there is currently a focus on the North School, what this would do would be to study what is the right thing to do
The
moving
study might not
forward.
say that that's the right.
And it includes, if we do not build a new building, what do we need to do to our current buildings?
And the assessment of what the needs of the department are now and going forward, to decades into the future, what kind of, what type of structure do you need, wherever you happen to put it. So it's not just a matter of location, is just one piece of it. And I can tell you from personal experience and some of the things going on in the region, that if you don't have a legitimate rationale for where you're going to site a municipal facility, you're going to have some trouble, politically and otherwise. You have to make sure that you're doing the right thing in the right place, because a consensus of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and others is only as good as walking into town meeting and having people say, I don't like that. That interferes with this other function. This is close to the playground.
You better have answers as to why
Exactly.
that's the right
Exactly.
thing.
Right.
And it's
No,
information
it's,
to back it up.
I got it.
And can I add, a feasibility study will also look beyond town-owned land. It'll look at
Yes.
other,
Good
all
point.
sorts of locations in
Excellent
the
point.
town with a cost-benefit analysis.
Anything else on that, Greg, at the moment? Or, I know, was it you that asked the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It usually is. I'm just confirming.
Because I encourage Greg to
That's
ask
right.
all the questions that
Absolutely.
he wants.
And part of it,
Everybody feeds him the questions, no. Okay, so the spreadsheet piece is what leads us to the ability to put 426,000 in stabilization and 80,000 in OPEB. Keeping in mind, once you take out these snow over expenditure, you're dealing with about $1 million. So this, as you can see, puts about a little under 600,000, no, I'm sorry, not 600,000, about over half of that,
Approximately half.
in savings, to put that away. So it's by function, the first row, the free cash column on the left, snow and ice, and then you go down. The cruisers, the voting machines, I don't have to explain, okay.
Yeah.
Unless everyone
Thank you,
else
Renee.
feels like we have to read them again, but.
No, definitely not.
Okay, I'm like, I think we just went over this. Okay.
You're not breaking my heart, no.
Okay.
And then the rate.
Thank you. Yeah, this is helpful. I like
No.
this.
Yeah,
And then
this
the-
is definitely good.
Yeah, it took me a long time to put this together.
Thanks, Sue.
Sure.
Yeah, no.
No respect. You will see that Article 3 is, I believe that's, is that $20 now, or 20,000? Oh, that's not the mowers, I'm sorry.
No, the mowers have decreased.
Okay.
The,
Very good.
yeah, we had the couple of decreases
Yeah.
based off of going back and looking things over. So
So the
I
top,
do appreciate the willingness to go back and look things over and to find places where we could reduce so that we can add more to stabilization.
well, it is, as you know, the process is such that those things that aren't, I don't want to say predetermined, but you can't buy off, regional purchase of some sort. You do have to, kind of, you try to be a little bit conservative, because as we mentioned earlier, you don't want to have funding that ultimately is of little value to you. Because some things you can pare down a scope, other things you just can't do that. You can't buy the item, so to speak, without the funds, so.
And as we discussed, things like the stormwater permit are
Sure.
fixed. And we know that those are things that aren't going to change in
Right.
price. But other things we asked you to take a look at, you took a look at, and came back with some reductions, which we greatly appreciate as a committee.
So I don't know that I have to go through any of
So,
this, just so you can
what-
understand how this all works. It funds the spending plan. Again, your recommendations are your recommendations. There are some, I know there's one that you haven't taken a vote on yet. The Island Grove expenditure that, you know, would seem to make more sense to be put in stabilization at this point. Those are the, major differences from what you've already reviewed in the past.
Question for the town moderator. For that one, where you had said, would that be pulled off of the warrant? If we're just recommending passing over, do we, and we think it's not the right thing at this time, do we want to pull it? I'm hesitant to pull things, because I always prefer to put things in front of the people of the town when it's,
Selectmen
but,
set the warrant?
Yeah, they decide.
Yeah.
so,
They would have to vote again to
And
change the
I'm
warrant.
guessing they're not.
They're meeting Monday.
They're
They are
meeting Monday, so they could potentially do that, so.
Might be something to consider, because
Yeah.
then if, like, a lot of people
I
come,
will-
I mean, I don't know, but I'm just, then it's $40,000 that we're not putting in.
I will
You know what I
put-
mean?
I
So
will
I think maybe,
Put that before
I will raise the
them and
question.
yeah, it might,
let
and if
them
it's
know
not,
that
it's
we've
not,
at
we'll
least-
just hope.
We've
best.
raised the question.
Believe it's the,
It's 14
I'm
days.
sorry. It's the 6th, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 10. Oh, ours is
Okay.
10.
Good point.
Ours is-
I'm
Our
sorry.
recommendations are
I'm
10.
sorry,
so-
Oh,
yes.
theirs is
So it's
different.
on.
Oh, okay.
That's a good point.
All right, so it's on,
We're
so.
not posting it at
There we
midnight.
go.
So,
It's
okay,
The town will have the choice.
that's right.
Correct.
All right, do
So-
we have questions? Or, we were at stabilization. But before we start looking at the individual warrant articles, do we have questions in general on the information just provided to us?
I just have a question, because I'm not familiar with what the other sections are for, sewer, golf.
So those are sections where the funding sources are coming from enterprise funds. So those departments have funds like the sewer, the charges that we receive as residents for the sewer go into the sewer enterprise fund.
So those are for the other capital items.
So those are for the other capital items. They're being paid from within their own department's enterprise
And
funds.
they're their capital
That makes
items, so
sense, yeah.
they use their.
Yes.
But you still have to capture
Yeah,
it on
I
here.
understand.
Yep.
And just for illustration, you'll see the ambulance column at 0. Not to rub it in, chief, just, okay. We shall adjourn
So
to
that was a
the,
good question, Joe, because that's definitely something that
Yeah,
people
so I
would
wasn't
ask.
thinking that we skipped over those items because we
Yep.
just focused on free cash, but
Yep.
that makes sense.
Dr. Tyler.
I just want to make sure that on this sheet, thank you for the details. It actually makes it a heck of a lot easier to kind of parse through the months.
Sean, please speak up.
I will in a second, because the question's coming. I don't know that I agree with the totals on the
27.
sheet.
I'm sorry?
I don't agree with the totals on the sheet. I don't know, it's because I might be doing something wrong with Excel, but I got a different number.
That's not what we're looking for at the moment.
And I just want to make sure I didn't goof, right?
So this is actually the free
No,
cash
that's at the
subtracting
end.
out all of these?
That's what the difference is.
Yep.
That's the delta. Perfect. Thank you very much.
I guess I'd hate to have to chastise my town accountant at this moment on camera, so.
No, she was gentle when she said, "Look at the starting
I see.
balance, idiot."
She's not usually that diplomatic, Sean.
I accept it that way. It's perfect.
I will just say I understood there would be no math.
So, shall we
Other-
adjourn to,
Other questions?
front row as well?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. It's definitely very good information that we very much appreciate. All right, with that, next item up for bids is stabilization, $426,673.
Wait, Article 5 we voted on?
For the special
Yeah.
town meeting, we voted on that last
Oh, I had
last
written
time
revisit.
around.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I wrote revisit
I don't
on
think we
5
did.
also.
Yeah, no action. We need to vote on it, because we didn't have a number. I think, so we
Oh,
decided
that's
to
right.
come back.
Yep.
So I think we need to
I did
vote
not
on that.
properly
Right?
note
I
that
might
in
be
my
wrong,
notes
but
last
I
week.
think we have to vote on it real
Yes,
quick,
we
because now
did.
we have a real number.
Yep. So
Article
number,
5,
Article
special town
5,
meeting.
which is the snow and ice,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah,
The snow and ice
the free
removal,
cash. Yeah,
which
we didn't have a number, and
last
now we
week
do.
our estimate was 370,000. The number turns out to be $341,355.
Right, so now we can
So now we can vote. Is there
I
a
would-
motion
Motion.
on Article 5 of this special town meeting warrant?
Motion to approve, Article 5.
Second.
Do we need to, is the printed version have the number?
No, I just looked.
So do we want to say, will the number be on the final?
We discussed putting it in motion.
Okay. So we will, can we
Approve
make
that
the
amount of money.
motion to approve it with the amount of?
Motion to approve, I'm going to amend that. Motion to approve Article 5 with the funding from free cash of $341,355.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of approving Article 5? All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous.
Sorry, now we can go.
Thank you, Renee, for catching that. Appreciate
Now we can
that.
go to 10.
So you're just noting.
I have a question. When we say we're passing over something, do we say like we don't agree with it, or that's just implied?
That is explained by the town moderator.
That we don't
at
really
the
think it's a
beginning
good
of-
idea.
At the
Okay,
beginning
so-
of the special town meeting.
In Abington, that's the phrase we use to basically reject the article.
Okay, all right.
If someone,
But then I think, then Matt usually, the chairman usually explains
Why, yeah.
what our reasoning was or what
Okay.
our debate was behind it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if like people just,
if
Feel
someone
like, oh,
wants
we
to
love
then
Island
stand
Grove,
up
it's
and
just-
make a motion to approve it and try to-
Right, and then, yeah.
They can do that.
okay.
I always, we have a meeting usually the week before town meeting with town manager, myself, town council, Matt, the town accountant, and we go through each article, what the expected motion will be, what the required vote's gonna be, what happens if someone makes this amendment, how can we handle, how
Yeah,
can we fund and all
okay.
that, so we try to get prepared so it's smooth.
Okay.
And I always encourage Matt, and he always does a great job with every article, say what the recommendation is, and then give a sentence or two to explain why. Just so you can save the people the time of standing up to a microphone and say, can you explain it?
Yep.
He does that to people get a better understanding, more comfortable to vote.
Okay.
All right. Article 10, stabilization. I think this again would
Motion to
need a
approve.
motion with the actual number.
Motion to approve Article 10 with the amount of,
Yeah.
thank you, coming from free cash.
And a previous article from
And,
FY
yeah,
19.
The motion will be drafted very clearly in my next one.
A second.
Any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of recommending approval for Article 10? All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. Article 11 for other post-employment benefits.
motion to approve Article 11 with the amount of $80,000 coming from free cash.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Joe.
Joe did.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of approving Article 11? Those opposed? All those abstaining? It is approved. Moving on to the annual town meeting warrant. The Articles 1 and 2, we approved last meeting. That takes us to Article 3, the capital
Which was
fund, which is
Amended.
amended in the new warrant that we have. This is another one, there are some written-in Rick, there are some written-in comments on the new article that was, or the new warrant that was printed tonight, that we received tonight. Will we need to be specific with the motion on this one as well?
Yes, and once again, for your review, we'll draft that motion.
Yep.
So like you'll have to go through and
So-
put all the amended.
So we will go through and put the amendeds into the actual motion.
So-
But so our motion,
So if you approve Article 3 as drafted here, we will, again, put together a motion that you can consider, make sure that you need.
so I think what I would look for is a motion to approve the Article 3 as amended.
On the list.
As amended, essentially.
So that's this,
Motion to approve Article
This, right.
3 as amended on the
like,
updated.
right here.
Yes.
Um,
And if you look on
Some of
here,
it, yeah,
has
some of it's
some
there.
On the
Yeah,
updated
okay.
handout, May 1st.
Yes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Dr. Tyler?
Just for readability and ease, on page 2, and I think it's only fair since it kind of spent a lot of time with the chief, it doesn't look like it's two separate line items. It looks like you're spending $75,000 for a pickup truck, and you're supposed to be spending 40 for the truck, 35 for the
I
ballistic
see what you
equipment.
mean, yeah.
Yes.
So just as a space, just to put a space between the two,
I think-
Yeah,
clearly reads.
So it's essentially a line.
yeah, it's just a
Deb, if you
space.
look,
I just, like I said, that
Deb, if you look at the fire department one,
See,
where they line up,
right.
it looks like they're both for the fire truck.
Yeah.
It's just an aesthetic issue, but I think it's a very good
Yeah.
point that it looks like they're both for the pickup truck. Any further discussion on Article 3, on the motion for Article 3 as amended? Without any further discussion, all those in favor of recommendation for Article 3? All those opposed? Abstaining? It is unanimous.
and that one, are we still revisiting? We don't have an amount.
5, we
correct?
are we do not have an amount, and so we are still waiting for that one. We will take no action before the 20th. 8, we
Same
have
thing.
said the chief will come back to us with another number, and so we will take no action at this time. For Article 10, we do have the primary thing that we were looking for in choosing to wait on voting for that. Obviously, we wanted to hear more from the chief, as we always do, but the primary thing was for the source of the funding, which will be from borrowing. So I think we have the information that we were looking for on Article 10, if there is a motion.
Motion. Motion to approve Article 10.
Second.
So motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on Article 10? Without any, all those in favor of approving Article 10? All those opposed? Abstaining? It's unanimous. Article 20 was the article about the center school. I just wanted to raise the question, as we were deadlocked at our last meeting, if we wanted to reopen that or if we wanted to continue as is. And I am putting that to the will of the board, and I am okay with either one.
I'm gonna wait and see what people have to say on town meeting floor for myself, because I abstained because I really am
Torn.
torn.
I mean, I understand it's like a nice building, but whereas a town, we're paying to maintain a building we don't use. So financially, I don't understand how it makes sense to keep it. I but I also didn't grow up in Abington. I don't have the sentimental value, or I don't know, and I don't even know where it is or where the neighborhood is, and I'm sorry to say that. But to me, from a financial standpoint, we're paying for something we don't use. And yes, the idea of the rec department sounds amazing, but it's probably not gonna happen. So then we're gonna hold on to this building and keep repairing it, and it's just gonna sit there. So that to me is hard to swallow from a financial perspective. It just doesn't make sense to me to keep something that we really don't have any actual plans and probably won't. Especially if the economy goes down in 2 years, we're not gonna have this awesome rec center unless a private company buys it and puts in an awesome rec center. That'd be great. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying is from a financial perspective, to me, I don't see the value in keeping it. And again, like I said, I don't know the area, I don't know where it is, and I'm sure there's people in that area who are very upset, but
I agree with that completely, and I'm worried about it falling in on itself before we
Exactly.
get out of our own way to decide what we want to do.
and then people aren't gonna, right now, the prices of land right now are high.
Right.
So sell now, instead of, let's keep maintaining it, and then
Exactly.
land prices go down, and then we could have gotten, $1 million, and now we're getting 500,000. I mean, the price of housing is not going to stay this high. So if you can sell, I say you sell. I mean, I know it's different than like me selling my house, but I just think we're not using it.
One of the things
Mr. Riley.
I'm looking at possibly expecting to that end is I know there are some people, there's been prior discussions in other meetings about potentially selling the building half of the land and retaining the field half of the land for the town. So I'm going to try to talk to the town council and town manager about, in the event someone were to stand up and try to amend this to say, to authorize them to sell only that half.
Portion.
Is that allowable? And
Yeah, that's
likely
not-
is allowable because it's, the proposal is to sell all 13 acres or a portion of it. And if the town says, let's amend it to say only a portion, they can do that. The question is, how do we define the portion?
Right.
We'll talk more to town council.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to keeping a field or something like that, because I think the town is growing, so I think, people are moving in, we might need more field, sport, if more kids grow, we're gonna need the space, but we don't need a building. It doesn't seem like,
Yeah,
Peter
well,
Schaefer
it's
says
a
we're not gonna
building, but
outgrow
there is then the
Beaverbrook.
attached-
Yep.
That,
Right, but we're not outgrowing
Ball
any of our
fields.
schools, we don't need it, so.
Right, and I'm not advocating for either option, I just want to be
Yeah.
prepared to address whatever the town meeting wants to do.
Yeah.
Because as you know, the article defers to the selectmen on if and where to subdivide, and that would be exactly what is the
Yep.
recreation.
Yeah, just town meeting could restrict the selectmen even further
Sure.
if they wanted to. But I'm sure the selectmen will do this best also.
So does anyone else have any other thoughts from last week that are different?
I don't have anything different.
Doctor?
I'd be inclined, since I actually voted against it, I'd be inclined to put a motion to reconsider, yet I think I'd be disingenuous giving the two members who also voted against it aren't here to speak their voice.
That was one of my main concerns with
I-
revisiting it. The people who are missing were very vocal in their opinions, and I would not want to have their opinions silenced in that matter.
What is so you already made a vote to recommend?
So we
No,
voted.
we deadlocked,
We voted
actually.
deadlocked. For against, and one abstention.
That'd be
So-
me. I can see both
It-
sides of it, I
It-
can see both sides of it.
It felt very appropriate that that was the vote at the time, given the discussion that we had. So I just wanted to, because it was a no action vote, I wanted to give the option to reopen that, but I do have concerns about it.
In
as
that vein-
Dr. Tyler is.
Yeah.
Kind of along those same lines, I'm not going to ask to reopen this tonight, but, because we don't have a full board. I voted last week against the, funding for public safety for the, St. Patrick's Day Parade. I wanted to get some more information. So I'm just giving you a heads up, I may ask to reconsider that, before town meeting.
So
Because
It
I want
is-
to know what we did last year, the year before. I have concerns that
Yes.
if they can't afford to, for the police detail, if that committee is struggling to afford that, I wouldn't want the parade to be canceled. That is a big Abington tradition, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. So I'm asking for more information. The previous years, what we did last year and the year before specifically.
This has not been funded
By warrant
by
article.
warrant article in the past. This would be, it's been requested, I think, at some point in the past.
It may have been, there was also, we talked about this earlier, there was some funding for the fireworks, which may have.
Yes.
We were thinking about.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we
That
did
was-
do the firework thing last year, because I remember.
Yep.
Get as much as I can.
Like that.
Parade.
So should we plan to maybe readdress Article 20 before town meeting? Like at there, because I mean, there's not everyone, I mean, last week we had a full.
That one was
So we're just gonna keep it as
formerly,
no action.
yes.
I'm
We'll
just
keep-
saying, when we have a full board.
Yeah,
right
no, I
before
think we
town
should have a
meeting,
full board too.
I might
agree.
ask to, I wanted to just get that more information on.
Yeah,
Um,
and I agree, I think we should have a full board for Article 20 if we decide to reopen it.
So, as such, that brings us to the new Article 25, which is raising and appropriating $30,000 for a management analysis of the police department.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We have had some discussion with the town manager on the merits of this study. It is something that the Board of Selectmen have recommended, correct?
They haven't specifically.
Or have asked to be explored,
That is correct. That is-
so.
So the selectmen haven't said that it's is necessary yet.
It is, I know they're planning on asking for a breakdown analysis, especially in light of, again, turnover in the leadership of the department in basically 2 years.
Right, because our current police chief has
Is
said
retired.
that he'll be retiring in 2 years.
Correct.
So they want to do this study to,
To evaluate the department in preparation for that time.
going forward.
And again, the number is, again, I admittedly very soft based upon one other, I have some other examples, but the pricing is different, different type of communities.
Yep.
Mm.
It's just not, again, these other communities that I've seen examples, they're not accredited, so, they're kind of in a little bit of a different standard at this moment. So choosing a number is again, it's a little bit of a, more much more is.
Yep.
Very limited sample.
Any further discussion on the new Article 25? So did we have a motion on that one? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval of Article 25? All those opposed? Abstaining?
I'm just not sure.
I don't know what Greg voted on
Good, yes.
that. Approve?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you catch that, Deb?
Trying to multitask here.
Okay.
Are you against or abstaining?
Abstain.
I'm abstaining, I can't make a decision, so I'll just pass.
And that is the end of recommendations. We have either recommended or pushed to the date of town meeting for more information on all of the articles in both the special and the annual town meeting warrants.
Can you just announce where town meeting is and when?
Town meeting will be at the high school auditorium, and it is at 7 o'clock on May 20th. It is a Monday night. The auditorium, if you have not been there, first you should go there this weekend, Friday or Saturday night, for the middle school play. However, if you don't make it for that, go to town meeting and check out the auditorium at the very least, if not just to participate in your local democracy.
Who's
But
over early?
Get there a little early.
Yep, get there early so we have numbers and can start right on time.
And then anyone that is got a burning desire to join this board, we're going to be having some openings.
Yes, there will definitely be openings on the Finance Committee in the coming fiscal year after town meeting is over and we have finished this year's fiscal process. So anyone who is looking to join, contact the town moderator, Sean Riley, or any of us. You can email us
You
through the town
sell it
website
better.
as well. So,
So quick question, this will be my first time as an Abington resident going to the town meeting, so what does arrive early mean? Like 6:30?
No,
6?
probably 15, 20 minutes early, because
Okay.
there'll be a short line where registered voters
You'll have
check
to
in.
arrive early.
Yeah.
the Finance
No, I
Committee,
mean, my wife, though, I mean,
Oh,
to let her
I would
know.
suggest everyone get at least 15 minutes early to check in and just have a seat.
Like 3 o'clock.
Too many lines.
Also, when we're at town meeting, you may feel differently about something that we as a board voted one way. You can certainly get up as a resident.
as residents,
And,
each of us are allowed to speak.
Speak your own.
We're allowed to, we
Your
all
own
vote
voice.
on the things, as we are all residents of the town. We vote along with everyone else on each of the articles. So,
Unlike other towns, we typically finish our town meeting in one night,
yes.
but we cannot start town meeting until we have 150 voters present and seated. So,
So-
no reason why we have to be
Come-
there, ready to go at 7 o'clock.
Come and bring at least one neighbor with you.
So just have a rough idea, how long does it last?
Depends. Marijuana's not on the
around
ballot
10?
this year, so.
I would estimate probably between 9 and 10.
Sure will come up.
Okay, good to know.
Probably.
Well, yeah,
Yes,
just the
it is,
3%,
but
but yeah.
taxing it,
Nah,
so.
Plastic bags, I mean, it's gonna be a lot.
that might be a big debate.
Speaking of which, can we just,
Why have people bananas for plastic bags?
not plastic bag, just.
Don't put your bananas
if-
in plastic bags.
It's probably better to address this with the Board of Health, but we have got to do something about our recycle. I don't know if anyone's caught any of the news programs this past
Oh,
week
with
or
the
so.
fines and stuff about
that,
people who aren't
you know, are
recycling
just
properly.
showing, and I'm wondering if some education around it wouldn't be helpful as far as saving us some money. Maybe we're not reducing, it's supposed to be reduce, reuse, recycle, and I don't think that.
No, people don't
I
understand.
don't
what
think
goes
that we're
in.
reducing enough, and so then we're looking to recycle, and right now, what are we paying per ton for the
Approximately the same as
trash?
Waste.
Approximately $85, approximately.
We're paying, the trash is how much? Trash is 65 a ton, $65
Dollars.
a ton. And what is recycle a ton?
85.
85 a ton. We were recycling, and it was,
Free.
well,
When we started.
it was half the price a couple of years ago. Half the price of the trash. I was watching something tonight. In Europe, they've been doing it for a lot longer,
So
and
I missed the first part, what's the concern or what's the issue?
the recycle, the budget, our trash budget is way out of
China's not
whack.
taking the plastic
We
anymore,
can't-
No, I
so
know, but I didn't know what the specific.
And we don't have any
article
place
was.
to put it here. There's
You're
some,
talking about the reduced.
I think the question from,
the reducing, or, we've got to figure out something. That trash budget's gonna go right through
I
the
think it's also properly recycling is a big issue.
big issue.
You know what I mean? You're putting stuff in recycling that we're
sorting
paying to
things
be
properly.
recycled, but it's not, and then you get
And then it's
fined.
costing
So I think
more.
there does need to be education on what should actually be recycled, and then actually reducing what you're actually using instead
Right.
of just
And-
thinking that you're recycling, that's a good idea.
to this,
Right.
Use a
having
reusable
not
container.
seen what you saw, are the fines coming to the community from the state?
No, from the trash hauler.
Yeah, I
from
guess
the-
I read
through
somewhere
the
they're like
contract.
checking.
Certain
the-
haulers
Yeah, they're
are-
like checking the barrels, and if you are
So-
like not compliant, you get like $25 fee or something.
Or the
in
tests.
Lowell or
I think some of the towns are doing
Lowell, I
it.
think I think it was
They're
Lowell.
having somebody follow the hauler
Yeah.
and
going
going
through and
through and seeing and,
So question to the,
Yeah, no,
to
we
the
do
town
that.
manager.
or have done that.
through the contract that we have for recycling and waste removal, are there fines to the town if we are not sorting things appropriately?
Not through the contract.
However, this is what year of that contract? When's that trash contract up?
Only 1 year, isn't it?
Year to year at this point, correct?
It's year to year.
And so it's
It's
up.
up every year. It's up every year.
So they're gonna add, you know what I mean?
Everything.
This is stuff we
Finance,
have
yeah.
got to be
There's a
planning
video on the
for.
Board of Health website, I believe it's still there, to explain why they're trying to strictly enforce the no plastic bags in your recycling. Because it comes up the recycling machines at the recycling center. It's a pretty interesting video if you're really into that, so take a look at it.
Well, there's, I've seen some new companies coming up too that are like new innovative type companies that are using plastic bottles that they're turning into thread that
Yeah, they're
then
for
can be
clothing.
used
I
for
saw that,
clothing.
yes.
So, but
Yes.
It needs
we
to be
got a
able to be
ways to go, and
reused.
as a town, we
Yep.
need to do something about the trash budget.
Yep. So,
Just my 2 cents.
People with best of intentions are, like I said, whether it's bags or trying to recycle things, it just
Can't be recycled.
don't belong in the recycling.
Yeah, no,
Like
or
a
like
paint
not,
roller.
yeah, I mean, like I have to like
Watch
take
the
stuff out of my recycling
Yeah,
for
but
my
I thought that
husband. I'm like,
most
what
of
are
the
you doing?
recycling ending up in landfills.
Yeah,
because
no, I
no
like
one's
sort
doing
through it before
recycling.
it goes in the bin.
So
There's a large
what are we-
portion of
what are we-
that,
What
yes.
are we arguing over?
In fact, last month, I think you may have seen the municipal advocate.
Yes. Yeah, we had a couple of copies of
That's why I
that.
said a couple months ago, why do we stop recycling and stop paying the extra $20
Well,
a
so
ton?
that's, I was gonna say.
So
So
there's
it's
a-
saying
there-
it's not an option.
there
it's
is-
not
It's
going
There
here to
is-
stay.
there is a-
Recycling's
there
here to
is a
stay.
state
You know?
mandate.
It was saying that it's not going away from what I read in
It's
the
not,
article.
so
It's
we
not.
have to,
So, as we
we gotta do
discussed,
something.
yeah, Greg, as we discussed several times at the beginning of the budget process when we were going over this, and even into last year's budget as this whole thing kind of exploded right after town meeting and after the budget last year.
Yeah.
The state does mandate that communities recycle. And
You'd have to get a waiver.
you would have to get a waiver, and the state has yet to provide waivers, or at least at the time that we discussed, had yet to provide a waiver to any community to skip recycling.
And sorry, it's 2019, like, we're really not gonna
Right.
recycle.
But if, what I'm
Come
saying
on.
is if they're
I
not
understand it's
actually
more money, but
recycling
like,
it-
come
But if they're
on.
not actually recycling it, if because people put plastic bags in it.
Well, they are
they're
recycling
actually
some of
recycling.
it.
I mean, but,
So,
Right.
I don't know, we put people on the moon, we can't figure out the plastic bag thing.
Well,
It's a
I know,
little
but
weird.
that's,
Not just plastic bags.
yes.
it's like if there's food and stuff, like pizza boxes can't be recycled, like
We
there's a
probably
lot.
won't solve it tonight, Greg.
Yeah.
Listen,
So,
But-
with that caveat that we will not resolve the recycling industry worldwide at this board meeting tonight, our next subject would be liaison reports. Do we have any? Without any, there was no correspondence tonight. And our next meeting will be on the night of town meeting, May 20th. We will meet at 6 o'clock in a room at the high school to be determined.
And would you like a motion to approve the meeting minutes
Oh,
of,
we have meeting
May
minutes,
of April
April 24th.
24th?
There's like, there's like two things.
We've gone through, so I will definitely email out what I write up for the explanation of our votes to the committee.
Did you second that, Renee?
Yep.
Thought so.
So
No, actually, I don't
we
know.
have a motion and a second for the meeting minutes from April 24th, which are very detailed and expertly prepared and go over all of our votes in excellent detail. Is there any further discussion on the meeting minutes? Without any, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes? Those opposed, those abstaining, the minutes are approved. Do we have any further motions, Barbara?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Without any discussion, all those in favor of adjourning? Opposed, abstaining? We are adjourned.